The new one, right?
Wow, that was super.
I'm not asking for you guys to act on it tonight. I just wanted to get it in front of y'all and be prepared maybe for next, at the regular scheduled meeting to act. And I just hit some questions to see if this is in line with the wishes of the board. I think it went beyond them cutting paychecks and
All right, well,
accounts payable. I think it's a little more
Oh, you-
detailed.
okay, you got it on here. Okay, all right, good deal.
You ready then, buddy? We're live.
Okay,
And you see on the both screens what you got.
got you.
Okay.
All right, board members, we'll call this work session to order here. We need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I so move.
A second. All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion, agenda is approved. The solid waste options. Now, I don't know, I don't know how much you had heard about the solid waste options and stuff from the study that we were getting.
I assume this is the study we're.
Yes. Yeah, and I know they were supposed to be bringing some information back.
Mhm.
And I think at the end of the day, at our last regular board meeting, I asked the board to maybe consider some options here, because we have some decisions to make as far as when they finalize this thing, but do we wait or do we get a consensus now? Kind of like, number one, I think the board's consensus at that the work session with Mr. Hope was that we would go with option 3, which was to move towards the transfer station. And so if that's the wishes of the board, then there is some other options that we can consider as far as what are we gonna do with that other piece of land, the 80 acres that is over there beside that.
So what is this next phase of the study that's gonna come back to us?
He was going to give us the solid numbers on the savings and a lot and a comparison, basically, if we continue to bury, but also the amount of savings, potential savings, if we just went with the transfer station. Because he was looking at he did not have the total for the operational cost at that time.
I hate to take something and keep kicking it down the road, but I would kind of like to have all those figures before we decide for sure, just my thought.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree, and I mean, it's just, if we, I think one of my bigger concerns was like with what is the potential to do with that so we can have some plans, and, because this won't happen now, this won't happen next month, this will be into the new board, and it's kind of like, with a new board, have to back up and slow down, or can we maybe leave some direction moving forward if they so, kind of opening a path, just kind of cutting the weeds at the path a little bit.
Well, I had a question. Somebody had mentioned that if you take a certain thing to these transfer stations, they tell you, you can't leave it here, you got to take it to the dump. Will that still be in effect?
The transfer station, that can be broke down to accept everything, and then it's anything specialized goes certain places, because the landfills take certain things.
I think big bulky items, I think is probably what they're talking about, couches and chairs and stuff. I think that logically that would still go to the landfill. And this would be more for the traditional municipal solid waste.
Right.
And then the cans would be serviced, and then the towns would deliver at that particular spot. And transfer station, I see, is a big floor, cans settled beneath it, and they can just dump it on the floor and then push it into the can. And the cans can be serviced, taken to another landfill or wherever it is. But I would think that large bulky items would still, and I think that doesn't change for the simple fact is, I think it's an intention not to jam up your compactors, but also not to take up so much space.
Right.
And in your cans
So
and
then-
fill them up so quickly.
To some degree, does the landfill have to stay open for these large bulky items?
No, I think they would be taken to another facility
I
on
see,
option
I
number
see.
3.
Oh, they would have that.
Yeah,
Okay.
It would still be added to it, but I think the delivery, instead of you having to haul or get your compactors jammed up or something like that, I think we do it in a minute. The big stuff, man, somebody throws a car chassis in there, it fills up the dumpster in no time. And
Yeah.
make a mess.
And just to be clear, what you're saying is kind of where I was thinking as well. Everything still goes to the transfer station.
Right.
The cans will go there. And what's taken at the convenience centers now is still the only thing they'll take. When he said go to the landfill, they have to go to the transfer station, which would be at the landfill. So that we would still not be burying any trash. They'll separate it there and it'll go to.
Landfill would be capped, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Vaughn, you may have the historical knowledge. There is an appreciable amount of money set aside in the bank.
Over 7 million. Right?
Over I think $7.4 million. That's specific to closure activities.
Mhm.
And you'd have to, and I can see right there, you'd have to do the closure of the landfill. So there's a big expenditure with doing that.
Mhm. But if I remember correctly, the way Mr. Hope was telling us too,
Mhm.
that the sooner you get this thing capped, the sooner you don't have to add to that 7.4.
But you gotta spend it.
Right, you gotta spend it.
You gotta spend it.
And that's what you're holding for, to spend it on that closure and that 30-year monitoring. But he said if we continue to use the current sale and the last sale that may be available at the current location, that 7.4 million would grow to over $12 million.
Really?
Yeah, so we could save a minimum of $4 million right now. The sooner we could build a transfer station and cap it.
And that's built into the fees already that you collect.
Yes.
I got you.
Yeah, because I think they were talking about we needed to hit around $100 a ton, or we were like at 42 in order to kind of break even or even.
And I think you have a tough time making it on 60 tons a day.
That's right.
And I think 60 tons a day is mighty tough.
You mean $60 per ton?
You get 60 tons a day at your facility.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you receive.
Right.
From Nottoway County customers or
Mhm.
commercial customers that may serve.
Prison and stuff like that.
60 tons a day for this.
That's right.
And I think it's tough to break in because you still got to pay for that compactor, whether it's 1,000 tons a day or 60 tons a day. You still got the same capital cost to do it.
But they just said that when you talk about the compactor, they said we had one of the best rates of empty. That, I think the max was like 8 tons you can get on that, and that's what our average is. So the guys aren't wasting trips.
Yeah.
As far-
The compactors can work, but you got to supervise them. Somebody throws a metal fence post in there, rascal, jam it up and make a mess of it, and then you got to fix it.
Right.
And that's why the big stuff needs to go to landfill,
Right.
so somebody doesn't sling that stuff in the dump.
And so Philip, that's kind of what my thoughts were at our last regular board meeting when I was talking about some of this, because it appeared that we were leaning this way, and what could possibly be the options of that 80 acres? Should we sell it? Should we do this? And I mean, it's just kind of trying to form a strategic plan now to cut a path for the new board, because I don't know when they may get this, but they did say that they can get this a transfer station built within a year's time, and that we could start capping it. And of course, one of the suggestions leads right into the next item here, on the Parks and Rec list. Does the county want to consider giving that 80 acres to the Parks and Rec in Nottoway County and doing something with that? Basically, do we want to go out there and build a park? Do something where you can draw in these travel ball teams and stuff out there onto these facilities inside the county? And the one thing is, you still have to have, what a location like that, you can have concessions and stuff like that, but overall, from that location, I think you're going to see a tax benefit to all the towns, because the people have to stay somewhere, and they also going to have to go shop somewhere, because it's not like it's in a town.
We've got that little baseball complex in Blackstone. It's tough to attract travel ball. You really got to market it. So it's got to be, it's not just the volunteers bidding on Dixie League games. That's easy. To draw folks, you got to have people committed to doing that. You really do. You got to have employees or something. If you're going to put in a multi-million-dollar facility, you're going to have to really sell that job.
Yeah, Ms. Vaughn, you had mentioned that too. You was like, who's gonna take the lead on that outside of the committee? And you're right. And that's one of the things that I wanted to also get y'all's blessing with, as far as Parks and Rec now. You guys appointed me and Ms. Simmons, but I think we need to make sure we would y'all be okay with us putting a rep from each town on there? Because I don't want to be.
You have to.
Yeah, because I don't want to be us working on something and lo and behold, Blackstone or Burke doing the same thing, and then we feel like we're competing. It's like,
No, see, here's what I'm hearing.
Well, we just,
From my end. There's a lot of discontent in the town of Crewe and Burkeville because the games are being played in Blackstone.
I'm getting the same.
I'm a little surprised that they did it. I don't know why they chose to do it.
Well, I got different answers or questions. One was that they didn't have enough volunteers and crew, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, I knew eventually when they went to a Nottoway association, things were gonna pop up. And this is the one thing that has popped up that I've been contacted about is that, why don't they play the games in crew? And then somebody said, well, they said the field wasn't good enough. Oh, the field is plenty good, you know, and that complex has been there for a long. I mean, I played ball the first year they did. You know, my daddy helped bend those columns, rails.
How about the little bit?
No, I'm talking about the Little League, Dixie
Okay.
Youth. Yeah, my daddy helped bend those rails and those bleachers. So, I mean, you know, that's been there a long time, and there's a lot of people upset. I mean, I see mainly it's girls like that practicing in the afternoon on the softball field. Every once in a while, you see a baseball team. I know the problem they've had is numbers.
Right.
They really don't get a lot of numbers anymore. So I think that's something you got to look at because you've got these facilities here. Now, you're not going to get travel ball coming in. Travel ball does come to Galoobic Stadium.
Mm-hmm. That's baseball, ain't it?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Travel ball does come to Galoobic Stadium. Mickey Roberts usually has teams coming out. Went over there one Saturday and there was Howie Long sitting up on the side with his wife. Yeah, his son was playing for the travel ball thing out of Charlottesville. So, I mean, you know, that Galoobic Stadium is a big asset to the county. People don't realize that, but you get people coming in high school playing their games, that helps, you know, and that's the type of thing that you got to look at. I don't think you're going to see, I've been watching over there in Richmond off of 288, you know, and they're constantly building more stuff. And I really don't know how many travel ball teams you could attract to our area. It would be tough.
I think it was 0 up until there were some hotels. I think you got one in
Right.
Crew now, one in Blackstone, and I think that's really almost a prerequisite for doing those.
Oh, you
kinds of
got
things.
to, yeah.
You gotta have someone first.
But well, and then, like I said, just the one in Berkeley as well. A lot of people,
One in Berkeley.
yeah, they don't see that because it's kind of setting back off the thing. But if we get into this Parks and Rec hard and heavy and get something for these kids out here, the other thing is, I think this Parks and Rec has the potential to have the numbers and the encouragement for the kids to maybe get more involved in our local rec. You know, these travel ball teams, they will come in and look at these games. And if the kids can't afford it now, they're looking for talent. They're out here scouting these all-star games and stuff like that and checking to see how good these kids are. And they try to figure out a way to, if they can't afford the travel ball fees, to try to find a way to work with them, whether it's through some sort of financing or bartering, or say, but that's a lot of good ball players.
You've got kids playing travel ball right now from Crew, baseball. So, I mean, I just don't know how much money you're gonna be able to generate if you go out in the middle of nowhere and build a park. I think that's just my own opinion. I think
I don't like to discuss other counties, but Dan Whitty did one on 360. I mean, 460.
460, yes, sir.
And they paid $3.2 million.
I'm sure they did. Talking at least, I mean, you'd have to have water, you'd be able to have to water fields, you'd have to have lights, you'd have to have all of that stuff done, and that's gonna be a big expense.
And new personnel.
Yep, upkeep is gonna be the other part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
People don't realize how much upkeep there is to those things. I know, I've done it myself.
Yeah.
So
And
it's a lot of upkeep.
Yeah, and then, I mean, there's other things that, and you know, when you start thinking Parks and Rec, a lot of times people only think ball, you know, because you can venture into adults, kids, you can venture into everything like that, but you can also look into these 4x4 riding trails, these side-by-side riding trails. 80 acres is a lot to do. And I mean, you've got people down here that have side-by-sides that are all like in the mountains and riding at some of these parks and stuff. So it's just, like I said, there's a lot we can potentially do with that 80 acres, or we can look to sell it. So it's just.
What you're establishing, John, too, you have to realize, you are establishing another department.
Yep.
And you're talking about big bucks.
Now,
I don't care what department, whether it's social services or whatever.
Right.
it's all
A lot of
money.
money.
Yeah, you're right. It's all a serious cost. And I mean, there's a lot that we have to get steady before we can get to this, obviously, but it's just, you know, it kind of goes back into our vision and stuff like that, like with our comp plan. Staying focused on moving with some of that as well.
Can I say one other thing?
Sure.
Nottoway has been blessed.
Mhm.
We've had a lot of young people
How y'all doing?
Hey,
who
Yeah.
have come and volunteer.
That's right.
And it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to volunteer.
all right.
Now, when you start going wet, it's gonna be just like volunteers are not going to volunteer if somebody's being paid.
I've already had somebody complain to me, they heard that, they were paying somebody to cut the grass at the crew fields. And he said, I did this for years, about for free, and now they're paying somebody to do it. I'm like,
Well, it has to be done. If you run out of volunteers, you get.
well, I mean, you know,
something.
that's what people don't understand. It's, most of the time, and I found this to be true in anything that I've ever done as far as athletics is concerned, as long as their child is playing, they're there.
That's right.
As soon as that child finishes, bye-bye. And I can't blame them. I mean, you know,
There's a
So
serious.
you're always having kids born, so
Yes, sir.
there's ought to be a continuation.
that's right. Should be.
Yeah. All right, guys, the next one here is the MOU with the schools.
I asked you guys if you would take a few minutes. I'm certainly not asking for not information, action tonight. But the MOU, I did meet with Dr. Grimes and with Heather, who I think is the finance director over there. And we had a long conversation, and obviously with the state and the condition of getting bills paid at the county and payroll, it's my understanding, and I think it's their understanding that at some point they were, specifically October 1st, they were going to take over payroll and take over their own accounts payable, which is a lot. I mean, it's the bulk of what goes to the county office. And this MOU was provided to me by staff, and I've read through it, but this takes it a lot farther than payroll and AT. This is actually a transfer of a lot of money to
Responsibility.
more than just the $250,000 that they would need for operations. But they're asking for an additional $2 million. I think and I want to make sure this is what you guys were intending. There's over $2 million of additional funds, school construction and
I see
multiple
that,
different funds that the county's been holding for project graduation, mentor teacher. They're small amounts, but the biggest one, as you can see, is school construction funds that the county currently owns. And that decision-making ability for the Board of Supervisors, once that goes in their checking account, I don't think is any longer your purview. For my initial thoughts, I thought we're gonna get AP and payroll over there. And I think that falls in the $250,000 at the bottom and subsection H, but I want to make sure you guys understand this MOU, it's more of a divorce than it is a trial separation. You know, this is pretty complete. This is gonna separate the county and the schools financially. They'll have their own checking accounts and all those kinds of things. So I don't know what the previous discussions brought. I do know that school construction can be a testy item, and do we all agree? And both bodies agree on what's being constructed, but I'm not 100% sure how school construction funds previously have been dispersed back to the school system. And I'm not sure that was y'all's intention. And I would just look for a little guidance. And this is an item, like I said, I'm not looking for immediate direction. Maybe digest this, look at it, but maybe something to be an action item for Thursday night, next Thursday night.
I was telling Lynn and Mr. Vaughn that Mr. Ronnie Rourke came by the bank the other day, came up to me and asked me, you know, did I have any questions? He'd be glad to answer them. So I asked him, I said, what about the school funds? He said, well, the way we did it was we'd give them the federal money and the state money, we'd hold back the local appropriation until the end, so we could keep the money in the bank. We knew where the money was going,
No interest.
you know, and
And if their ADM didn't meet, then you would have already dispersed the money to them.
right. So that's what he said they did. I had no idea. I just asked him, I said, what do you think about the school funds? And that's what he told me. So I don't know if that's something to think about. I really don't know.
I don't recall the intention being to give them everything. Do y'all?
Well, I thought the big deal was they want to pay their bills and the payroll, and that was it.
That's where I had thought.
Yeah, that's
but
what I thought.
This goes,
That was because we ran into that problem, but this is the first time they've ever come and want to do this.
Right.
But I can't remember.
and I'm all for them cutting their paychecks, and I'm all for them doing AP, because it's a bunch of them. I mean, it's a lot of bills, milk and pencils and
Oh,
all
yeah.
that kind of stuff, and electric bills and all that. But this is a complete separation of all functions and activities.
I wouldn't feel comfortable because it's the county's money. And I wouldn't feel comfortable just saying, here it is, go spend it. That's my own.
Is it the county money or their money?
Well, it's appropriated, but part of it is what we've appropriated to them. And what Mr. Rourke said was they would give them the money that came in from the federal government for them. They would give them the money that came in from the state government for them. And then as the money was running low, then they would start giving the county appropriation. I think two purposes. Number one, they keep that money in the bank and get interest. And then number two, it kind of holds back what's being done. You know, they can kind of keep a lid on where the money's going.
I think the last quarter of the fiscal year, the ADM, average daily
Right.
membership, and they established that during the course of the year, maybe April or something, the
March.
final one, March.
Right.
The final one is done. And then if you have a decrease in school population, like I think there is a
Yeah,
decrease in
it
school
is.
population, then the amount appropriated may not have to be transferred.
Right.
And, so
It was like 13,000, I think, per student, or something like that.
it was 8,000 last time I was a county administrator, so it's
Okay.
increased appreciably then.
Yeah, so, well, regardless of what it is, let's say there's 100 students, that's 100 times whatever that the county doesn't have to pay out, because once you, like I said, once you give it to them, it's there.
It goes in their checking account. That's the difference here between what I've been told.
Well, so what about this? What about if we're giving them their Fed money when that's here, give them their state money when that's here,
Mhm.
and then any other monies that they need?
I think this local is this operations and infrastructure perhaps at $250,000. So they can make their first payroll and do all that
Right.
kind of thing.
Right, but any of this other stuff that, I mean.
I don't think the other stuff amounts to a mentor teacher. I think we know what that's
mhm.
likely for.
Right.
But that school construction fund could be a pretty appreciable capital
Yeah.
project.
Well, I mean, like I said, I thought we were doing payroll and AP. And if they have other requests for something else, I mean, it's just a simple conversation.
Mhm.
You know, bring it to the board. I mean,
And like with school construction, say they need a new roof, you can come together and say, I need a roof, and then it'll be worked out.
Right.
Both bodies, and then preparations will be made.
yeah. I mean, you ain't trying to take it from them. I mean, you're trying to,
Well,
but it's,
I think the taxpayers in Nottoway County would want us to have a little control over it.
I agree.
And that was the whole purpose. We did it to start.
Yes, sir.
So as far as any direction for Mr. Norwood, then it sounds like the consensus is stay focused on AP and payroll, and then these other items, let them bring it to us.
Okay, I can sit down and talk to them and see, oh,
Yeah.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Whatever is state and federal money and whatever is due to them from the county.
Right.
That's what they.
And I'm gonna tell you, I think that school construction fund,
Mhm.
I think that's appreciably state and federal money.
Probably is.
I think those are probably dollars that have been appropriated over the years,
Yeah.
for the school system. So I think the majority of that, but I do believe there's local monies in that operation infrastructure line.
Okay.
Well,
But you guys have been holding those other funds because you
Right.
hold the checking account.
You probably need to sit down and talk to, you know.
You remember that was my recommendation when I talked to you. Bring you up about the phone, then we talked to you, remember that? Lee?
Mhm.
So do you wanna have another conversation with them and iron
Okay.
these other items out, and then tell them we still want to make this done, but I'd like to get this done so we can sign this MOU for them next Thursday?
And get some questions, and maybe the board of supervisors is interested in holding on the school construction fund so that there can be some, because that's the bulk of it, obviously. In operations, they gotta cut paychecks and do things, but maybe some of these other things you could let them have forest reserve grants and things, and communities and schools grants.
Right.
Right, yeah,
And I can learn a lot myself. And I'm sure Heather can tell me timing. Was this a carryover from previous years, or is this current year that we will receive? I'll try to get that done before Thursday.
Okay.
Report to you.
Well, that's it. Did y'all have any more questions on that? Then we got the draft agenda for next week. I'll take a few minutes and look over that and see if there's anything missing or not. The rezoning of Blackstone Reynolds. What is that?
Pardon? Which one?
The rezoning for Blackstone Reynolds.
Blackstone Reynolds is, it's a gentleman that, the gentleman's name is Herbert Fitzgerald. He built
Yeah.
Patriot Square, the old VFW property, but this happens to be outside of town limits. It's adjacent to the Eagles, and I think it's a home, and it's currently zoned business, commercial.
Mhm.
And I think the people are wanting to close on it and buy it, but it's a single family home, and their lender doesn't want it to be zoned commercial and have asked for the rezoning to be done in order to facilitate transfer.
Okay.
And it would be a logically commercial strip. You got the Eagles, like a car and those kind of things, but these folks are having trouble closing on their home purchase because title company has noted that it is a commercially zoned property and the lender wants that to be changed.
Okay.
Now, I will point out, this is the last rezoning that you'll see, and I acquiesced after I had announced that we're not going to do this concurrent zoning stuff anymore. But this one was already in the pipeline, and he had already promised, because it's all about timing, getting this thing closed. That is the main purpose of the request, is able to facilitate a sale of the piece of property, which is currently a non-conforming or grandfathered activity in your commercial district.
Yeah.
And they don't like the uncertainty of the grandfathered standing.
But it is a lot of records, though, right?
There's a lot of record, absolutely. Yep.
And then,
Keep my senior resources appointment. I see Rourke here. I should have one,
okay.
a reappointment.
Did they ask something about Arlene?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about, you got someone different?
No, but we still have to reappoint her. She still has to be reappointed. After her time is up, then you have to reappoint.
Right, did you see the email that they sent? PSR sent an email,
No, I haven't seen.
all right, because they're asking for her not to be reappointed until they have a discussion with her.
I haven't seen anything from PSR.
All right,
Well, I've got the email. I received it as well. Fine, send it to everybody.
yeah,
So everybody can look at it. But
Yeah, send it to-
I saw the header that said, please hold from appointing. I don't think it was dissatisfaction or unpleasantries or anything. I didn't get that impression from it, but it did say on the reappointment of Marlene, so I'll pass it around to everybody.
yeah, I'm not sure what their contact was.
Maybe she had been able to attend meetings or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will pass that around to everybody.
Yeah, and she's,
Not tonight anymore.
Oh, this here, that's for my reappointment.
I know, that's why I brought it up. I said, because I'm supposed to have one too.
Oh, okay, all right, I follow you now, okay. All right, and the animal shelter update, the bids will be done there too, right?
Bids are open.
Okay, on the unfinished business.
How do you come back?
You okay with me talking, or do you want to wait? What you want to do?
We didn't have it on the agenda, but do we have a consensus to allow it?
Why don't you, if you would, can you be consensus for me to just give you a brief report?
Well, could that be incorporated under the review of the draft agenda or not?
Yeah,
Added to it.
Yeah.
The bid.
But I mean, we've got on our agenda for tonight, regular board meeting draft agenda, so we're reviewing the draft agenda. Can we discuss what's on that?
Yes, yes, we can. So
Sounds good to me.
are you gonna be giving us the updates?
I can give it to you right now, but
The
if you,
opening as far as what the bids were, because those bids were,
well, I probably need some direction from you guys. The bid was $3,800,000 and change. $3,814,000, I think it really was. Without any modification to the plan. So this is the same project that was bid out verbatim as the one that was bid out last time, which was 4.9 million, if I'm not mistaken. So it's trending in the right direction. And I asked the committee, it's a tough committee. Tough audience, man. Don't say anything bad about a cat, I'm telling you. And, what's the thoughts of the board? How much were you interested in spending? Did you, I think the engineers or architects estimate was $2.6 million. Is that correct last time?
That's their estimate that they thought we were gonna put in, is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that's what the engineer said this building should cost. Just like he told us our architect told us the armory should cost $3,885,000. That was architect or engineer estimate, which is a moving target sometimes.
And that was before the shift in the economy and the supply chain interruptions and all that stuff.
I think you've seen the market, and without modification to the plant or square footage or something, I think you're gonna be hard pressed to beat that number. But I do think there are things that you can value engineer, and I was asked the architect to consider sitting down before you approve, because the bid is good 60 days, and to sit down with the architect and the contractor and say, what are some things that we can find agreement on that's not going to inflame passions, but that we can save some money on. Maybe it's some of the fencing, maybe it's a type of roof. I think the architect even mentioned it's an impact resistant roof shingle. Sounds good, but I don't know why I got it on there, but that's just an example of maybe we just go back to an architectural shingle, a standard shingle, and say, I think that process has to happen before you guys can.
That's a logical
vote.
next step.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if that's okay with you guys, I'd like to sit down with Chris, the architect, and potentially, and the contractor, for everybody's information, public information, is Norman Construction. And I think Norman is from Mechanicsville. I think they're from Mechanicsville. I met him at the pre-bid. There's an older gentleman.
What's the typical procedure? Do we get references on that? What is
Architect would.
Okay.
The architect would. That's part of his recommendation process. He'll look at the bids, he'll do the math, make sure they haven't had math error. He will make sure that that their submittals that they submitted, we had a bad problem in Blackstone just today that we had to clean up, but he'll make sure that their bid is their bid. But I think there's some ways to get that down. But I don't know what the target would be.
Well,
The target 2.6,
well,
3.3?
I think we had kind of suffice to not saying how much the board was willing to put in here, because we didn't want them to say, oh, well, they're willing to do that, so we can go here.
I think you're still gonna be in the threes, but I think you can shave an appreciable amount.
Well,
I think knowing after everything's been shaved,
There you go.
knowing what we're left with will kind of help us determine how much we are willing to put toward it, maybe.
Yeah, because and I don't want to speak for anybody's thoughts here, but it may not be stern, the kind of number it may have some flexibility amongst the numbers here, but it was a general consensus of a general figure of what we were going to spend on taxpayers' money on this. And I think some of this has gotten a little bit lost because this is not a situation where and it sounds god awful, it's not intended, but this is not about someone's personal agenda of saving all the money. What this is the state has given the county the ability to tax to provide animal control. That doesn't include some of the stuff that's on that plan.
I think
That is
the
well beyond
committee's
that.
intention would be that their money would go to the extras.
And if that's the case, then, that's fine. Yeah.
That was my understanding.
The cat patio or something I mentioned at that meeting. I
they've
think
already got somebody that's gonna pay for
there's some folks that are interested in having that
Yeah.
put in there, and they didn't really want to take that out.
Yeah, but if the consensus of the board here is that, maybe you go ahead and meet with them.
Try to negotiate a little bit and
Yeah.
find out where there's some savings and what can happen.
Yeah,
And what
with the roofing and stuff like we're talking about, so.
I will tell you also, I've talked to Brian Welch on a couple of occasions, and they've got a pretty significant utility cost to get the water and sewer over there. It's not cheap for them to do. But we took,
My question is, and I asked it the other day, but I'm not sure we got answered. If we had everything in place right now, is Berkeley gonna be able to run that? Because they were looking at over $1 million, right? I don't think they have it, do
I think they'd be well served by just putting a septic tank or two septic
they?
tanks.
Yeah, one for human waste and one for animal waste.
Or even not a drain field for the animal waste, but a regular pumping schedule, something, but Purple looked at a bunch of money.
Well, and see,
Crazy boat job.
I mean, we gave them some ARPA funds for their planning and stuff like that, to take care of that end of it, but, yeah, and of course, it's the first I'm hearing about that number too, so.
I think there's still a lot of loose ends. It's not a tidy package.
Right.
Because the budget is uncertain and, we've got maybe competing interests. I think everybody wants a good animal shelter, but you have a fiscal, whereas the committee has more of a specialized interest where they, the animal welfare, I think probably weighs heavily on that group. So I think they've got some loose ends to work together and figure out what can it be. But we got 60 days unless the contractor wants on a bit lower than that. So gotta get it wrapped up.
All right. What's going on with Mountain Level?
Mount Level is a church in Amelia County. And they've written a letter kind of similar to, and they're asking for recognition of a particular date in a particular event that they're having. And I think they're not asking you for money, but it is a recognition that the Board of Supervisors said, we recognize such and such a day as Mount Level Day.
I would like to add this letter from Ms. Branch to the agenda too. So
Great.
we can read.
Yeah, put that on the new business, so that'll be item number 8.
Just, I guess it would be the, Luther H. Foster,
Alumni.
what do they call it, road sign or whatever.
Alumni.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, Alumni Association.
And I will tell you, Blackstone's working with Luther Foster Alumni Association, and we intend on putting a little alumni room together
Mhm.
at the new armory. And we did it in Amelia when we renovated Russell Grove School. And they have a little museum in there now. They got displays of yearbooks and football cleats and
Oh, that's neat.
stuff. So maybe we can do a little something like that over there.
Yeah, Helen, you weren't here when I told him, I got a call from Mr. Branch asking me and I received a letter, and I told him I hadn't seen a letter. And so I called Andrea and I said, anybody, and she hadn't seen anything. So
Mhm.
he came to the bank today and brought me the letter.
That's
I
what he
made
tried to
copies for
tell me.
y'all, yeah, and I told him, I said,
Cause he tried to call me the other day and
that's what it was. Yeah.
he was calling me on Messenger and I was,
Yeah, so I told him, I'd give everybody a copy of the letter, and I think we'll put it on the agenda. And he said they're not ready to have the ceremony yet, they gotta get the sign, but they just want everybody to know where they were at as far as going on, so.
So yeah, we'll have that added on the new business, for Luther H. Foster School Market.
Yeah,
And you all now have a copy of that letter.
everybody's got it.
Yeah.
Was there anything else y'all saw?
If I can make sure I get one of those copies for Andrea. You got
Here you go, I got one. I got everything.
Never mind. She got
she got one.
All right.
All right, guys, did y'all have anything else other than, comments, Ms. Simmons, if you have any comments?
No.
Ms. Vaughn?
Not at this point, but it's something I do want to talk about.
Okay. Ms. Shepherd?
Yeah.
Mr. Ingram?
No, sir.
And now the aye. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn the work session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned.
We're scheduled to start up at 7:30.
7:30.
That was my mistake. Man. I thought your work sessions might last a little longer.
Why it was 7:30?
So, but that's, the notice is out.
Yeah, so we have to
Can
go.
we talk?
Not yet.
Yeah.
We still.